So as you are introduced, hello, my name is Layla from Team 421, the Vitruvian Bots, and today I'm going to be going over sort of how our team does a design process. It's not really on like how we just like design our mechanisms, but more on how we choose what mechanisms we're going to do and sort of the actions that we're going to take during each game. So a little introduction to ourselves. We're Team 421. We're located in El Segundo, California, and we were founded in 2012. Some of our recent accomplishments were we were the first seeded Alliance captain and the winner at the LA Regional in 2020, and we were also the Chairman's 2021 LA Regional winner. So for our agenda today, I'm going to be going over some of the steps that we take on our team to get our robot. So we start with rules, then we go over to cycle and then robot actions. Then we do a cycle breakdown. Then we choose our goals for our robot. Then we do robot predictions. We decide what we're going to do for our robot, and then later on the calendar, we're doing preliminary design review. So to start off, the most important thing to do is read the rules. So the first step when creating a strategy is to read the rules. Reading the rules is like very, very important. It gives you a way better understanding of the game and sort of points you in an area of where like how you should be playing the game. Obviously, during like the game reveal, you could sort of see how the game should be played. But once you read the rules and the specifications in the rules, it gives you a better idea of how you should be playing it. Some things that you should be looking for when you're reading the rules are point values or ranking points, how much the point values are and how you get those point values, and also ranking points. Ranking points are definitely important for teams who don't want to rank high. You also want to look at how ranking points are sort of converted after qualifications, because I know during certain games, ranking points aren't really like a thing and like they can become obsolete, but in some games, the ranking points aren't converted to actual points. You also want to look at robot restrictions, such as like, how big the robot can be, fouls, like what the robot can do, and also look at the field layout. Giving you field layout can give you a sense of like where you want to go during the match and sort of the plan for how you'd want to play matches. And when you're looking at all these values or all these rules, you kind of want to look for loopholes. This should be like the main. If you do find loopholes, it is like pretty fun and pretty cool to use. For example, Team 469 in 2010, they're pretty famous for finding a loophole in the game where it made scoring insanely easy for them. So if you are able to find those, you could definitely use those as long as it's legal. But definitely the first step is, using the rules, because if you don't know the rules, you don't have a concrete understanding of the game. And if you don't have a concrete understanding of the game, you aren't able to really find the solution to the game as best you could. So after you find the rules, you're going to want to create sort of ideas for cycles. And the way that we start with this is by doing robot actions. So robot actions are basically how what the robot can and will be doing during the game. And when you're deciding robot actions, you want to be very, very specific on what you're doing. So example, instead of saying the robot is going to score a ball, there are many different actions that go into scoring a ball. So you would say the first step is picking up a ball from the scoring zone or the loading zone. Then it'd be another action, driving to where you're going to shoot. And then another one would be maybe lining up to where you're going to shoot. Then another one is shooting. That would be a whole entire cycle for scoring. And even if like for that, you could go even way more specific and more in depth. For example, if there are different loading zones, you want to make sure that you're adding those in. So you're making like being more accurate. If there are different places where you can score, you want to make sure you're adding those in too. So for example, on here for shooting ball in the left goal during auto is different than shooting ball in the right goal during auto. And although it might seem similar, you definitely want to make specifications, especially if those values give you different points or take more time or different times to complete. So then from there, we're going to give all of these actions a time value. This seems a very, very cluttered, but I can explain it a little bit more. So you're going to give all these values a time value so we can determine how many points you're getting per second during the match. So you see here, I think this, okay, so you're going to start here for driving and pick up 5 balls. That's going to estimate, we're estimating that's going to take 0 to 20 seconds. Driving to shooting point, 1 to 10 seconds, 1 to 3 seconds to aim, and then 3 to 5 seconds to shoot balls. And then we estimated that it's going to take us 15 to 38 seconds to shoot 10 to 15 points. And this is important for us because we have to know how much it's like, we want to make sure that we're like maximizing our time and not like wasting it on not getting points. So it might be hard to sort of get or figure out the time values. And one way that we do this on our team is we do a simulation on kickoff. What we do is the mentors sort of like gather materials from our shop and put them on the field, and we get 6 students, and the 6 students are supposed to mimic a robot. And from there, we see how long it's taking, a student to pick up a ball and shoot it, how long it's taking a student to, traverse the whole entire field. We know that a human and a robot aren't the same thing, but we can sort of, make an estimation based on that. Not only does it give us like a time estimation, but it also gives us like, sort of human instinct. What's the first thing you want to go for when you're playing the game? And you're going to want to do this for every single action, even if it like seems small and different. Like, for example, if you go here, let me see, if you go here, oh, no, wrong. Left goal and right goal, it might seem different or like the same time, but you still want to put that in there. And then for next, we're going to figure out how much time or how many points you're getting per second. And it's going to give you sort of a priority list or like a beginning of a priority list. So you see here that to drive to a ball and score a goal in 3 seconds, we're adding up the amount of time that it's taking to do all of that, and then dividing it by how many points we're actually getting from that. So we're getting 0.33 points per second. No, we're at 1 point and then doing that in 3 seconds. So we're getting 0.33 points per second. And if you see here, we have multiple different times for the same action. So the reason we do this is because it's like a new game. So we're not gonna know I actually know how long it's gonna take to shoot a ball. So we're listing different amounts of time so we know maybe what our goal is. If you have a goal of getting points per second, then you're gonna know that you have to drive to the ball and score in a goal in at least 5 seconds to maximize how much time you're spending on shooting. So then from here, you're gonna also want to figure out what your goals are for the season, or for at least like a regional or a championship. So some team might say they want to be a championship winner. Some teams say they want to be top 8 at a regional. They might want to be the best defense bot at a regional, or maybe they want to be 3rd pick of the first alliance at a regional. You could have multiple goals. For example, like our team might say that we want to be, the first alliance captain for a regional. But then if we say we get to a championship, we also want to make a bot that can win at a championship. So you can have multiple goals. We also have to make sure that their goals aren't sort of overlapping or contradicting with each other. For example, if you want to be the best defense bot at a regional, you also probably will not be the highest scorer at a regional unless defense gives you points. You have to choose from here what you want to do. But most of the time, it's pretty easy to make this choice. So from here, this is going to give you sort of a foundation of what robot you're going to want to build. And from here, you're going to try to make predictions of what robots will be on the field. So this is one of the predictions that we made for 2017 or 2016, I think. No, I think it's 2016. So we created sort of bots that we might find in a championship alliance, one being a high goal bot, one being a breacher bot, and one being a feeder bot. And we listed off stuff that they could do or possibly would be doing during a match. And then we listed out some of our goals for the season, and some of our goals were ranking in the top 8 and being first pick. So we listed off things that would need to happen to rank top 8. For example, gaining ranking points during quals, and then we list off everything that needs to happen. And for it to be ranking top 8, we need to break 4 to 8 defenses. And then to be first pick, we'd have to have a high goal bot and also a breaching bot. So from here, you can make sort of assistance requirements for what you need for your robot to be able to get these goals. So from our assistance requirement, we figured out that we must breach 4 of the 5 defense categories. And then we figured out what were the defense categories. A low bar requires less than 14 inches in height. And then categories B and C require a good drivetrain, and categories A and C require manipulators. So we have to choose at least 4 of these categories, and then make sure those mechanisms were implemented into our robot so we were able to fulfill this requirements. We also have to shoot from the high goal. As seen before, that was what we chose. And we had to fire from indefensible positions. I guess one of the problems that we foresaw was that there would be a lot of positions where you could be defended easily, and that wasn't really one of our strong points. So we knew that we had to like shoot in the high goal, but from an indefensible position. And we also knew that we had to scale the tower, and because we have like a lot of points, and if we didn't get those points, it'd be very detrimental to our strategy. So here is sort of like where you make your final decisions on what robots you're, or like what you're, I forgot the word, like what you're gonna be doing during the match So obviously not every match is going to go the same exact way. There's going to be different obstacles or different challenges you're going to have in a match. But during like a dream or your goal match, you have to sort of list out what you want to be doing and make sure that during those times you're able to do all that in one time in the time of the match. So if you see here, we have the remaining time on the left. So we start off with 135 seconds, and then we list off how much time it's taking for every single one of these actions to do, how much points each of those actions gets us, and then how many points overall we got or we would get. So we list here score ball in 10 seconds, score ball in 10 seconds, and score ball in 10 seconds. Again, with the time, it's very important to, set a very realistic goal. You don't want to be saying that you're going to be scoring a ball in 1 second. If you know your team might not be able to score a ball in 1 second, I probably would suggest that you have like a more like liberal goal, I guess, where it's like you give yourself more leeway instead of like sort of constraining yourself to like try to get a very high scoring time. Because most of the time, if you like go for something very, very high, then and if like it might fail, it's very hard to go back and like make something that's actually gonna work. So make sure you don't like go hard on yourselves here and set like a very unrealistic goal. And then from here, after we make our decisions, one thing that our team does is a PDR, which stands for a preliminary design review. And we typically do all the stuff I said before, we typically do on day 1 and day 2. So it's kickoff and day two, I guess. But the PDR we do sort of week 1 or week 2 after our original discussion. So what a PDR is basically we discuss some of the ideas and designs we have for every single mechanism. We display our pros and cons of every single design and show it to the rest of our team so they can give input on each of the designs and what they think is best for the robot. So here is an example of one of our PDRs that we did in 2017 I think it was 2016. So in 2016, I think the big focus was on the drivetrain because there were a lot of obstacles on the fields. So if you see here, we only have like sort of one idea for the drivetrain, but we go into depth on like different parts of the drivetrain could be. So here are the slides that we showed. For the drivetrain with 6 wheels, our pros were it had at least 6 wheels, least wheels, and also had bigger wheels. But the cons were that it had a high belly pan and we couldn't really prototype on it. And the high belly pan was sort of a problem for us, not strategic wise, but more design wise, because the high belly pan might have like hit the obstacles on the field. Then we displayed our 8-wheel drivetrain. The pros was that the belly pan was 3 inches off the ground, but the spacing, I guess, for the wheels was better. But the cons were that it couldn't traverse the ramparts, but also I guess there was another issue with spacing. And then for another design, our drivetrain with 10 wheels, some of the pros were that it could cross most of the obstacles that we want to cross. And there was, I guess spacing was the best for our team, but the con was that we did have to cut down the length of our chassis from 29 inches to 32 inches. And then we displayed sort of how it would work with Cartoon CAD. So Cartoon CAD is a way to CAD different ideas or like sort of prototypes without like having to CAD a whole entire robot. So we use basic shapes to sort of mimic how the robot would work or look. So with 8 wheels, we saw here, this is how it would look on one of the obstacles. But in the end, we saw that this part right here, we had to cut off a part of our belly pan to make sure that it wouldn't hit it or that it wouldn't get further damaged. Another part here is for the 10-wheel drivetrain. If you see here, it does hit it, but it hits it significantly less than our 8-wheel drivetrain. So I think in the end, we did go with our 10-wheel drivetrain, because I think overall, when you're choosing your design of the robot, you want to not only go with something that works well, but something that also works with your strategy. For example, maybe the 8-wheel drivetrain did work well, but it didn't work with a strategy because it wasn't able to traverse every single obstacle on the field. There have been other instances where, something might look good and it might like work the best, but in the end, it's not going to actually benefit you or your strategy. An example of this might be, I think in 2020, our team, we kind of wanted to go for a buddy climb because it worked really cool. Like you can get a lot of points from it, but in the end, it didn't work for us because that wasn't part of our strategy and it wasn't what we want our robot to do. So you have to look at it from like sort of a trade-off point of view. Yeah, you will have like maybe like a really fast robot, but if it doesn't match your strategy, then your robot won't really fulfill your goals. This is all I have for this presentation. It was kind of short, so if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. If I don't get to answer your question today or right now, feel free to contact us at info@team4201.org. That's it. Sorry for being so short.
So Ricardo had some issues, so he had to leave, but I'm your new host. I'm Sophia, nice to meet you. Thank you both for your presentation, Leila. It is great having you here. And well, we're just gonna wait a couple of minutes if someone in the public has some questions. And thank you very much. So we're just gonna wait a bit. I think there's a question on the chat. Some anonymous viewer is asking how realistic we should be with our objectives and goals.
I think the best way to be sort of realistic is to look like on past games and see how you guys have also like performed in those games. This works best for teams that like have been in FRC for a very long time. For example, a lot of FRC games, you can like sort of tell how you are going to perform based on how you did in those games, because a lot of times first likes to, you know, not reuse concepts, but reuse sort of like game pieces or like certain ways to play the game. So if you saw how your team played the game during those times, you can use like the way you performed to be realistic during a new game. But I think instead of being, you should, I think, be realistic with like how you did. Also, maybe if you want, you could choose to push yourself a little bit more, or you could choose to be, you know, more relaxed on how you choose those goals.
Okay, so there is another question, again from an anonymous viewer. How many days are they ideal for that programming team to receive the robot?
I like have never done programming, so if you want, I can like give you another answer in an email if you drop your email in the chat. But I think on our team, what we try to do, we don't give like, I think it takes like at least 2 weeks for us to give the robot to our programming team. But we do have like extra like test robots that we give to our programming team, and they from there start testing like autos and other mechanisms without having the actual robot on them. So if you do want to have like a test robot to test while you don't have the while program doesn't have the robot, that'd be a really good idea.
Okay, thank you a lot, Leila. Maybe also if to that anonymous spectator, you could leave, I don't know, an email or a contact later on of someone of the programming team. Maybe that would also help if they have more questions. But we have another question that it says, should we limit ourselves to not do like subsystems for every challenge? Like, should we limit ourselves to not do all the subsystems to win? I think that's what he meant.
I get you. I think it's more like I think the question is asking, should you like try doing every single thing in a game? That's what I think it is. But I don't think you have to do every single thing in a game to win. An example of this would be like in the past game 2020, there was the carousel thing, or like the thing with the colors. A lot of teams didn't use that, and they probably didn't use it because they saw in the point values during the rules that it wouldn't really give them an advantage in the game. And if they did go for it, they probably did have like a lot of time and resource to use on it. For example, I think our team, like for the spinny thing, we didn't really use it, and like it was like an off project that people could work on, but it wasn't really a priority. So I think definitely looking at the rules and seeing like what is actually worth your time, and like figuring out the points per second can definitely tell you like if you should actually be doing every single thing in a match.
Thanks. I'm gonna mark that question as answered, Leila. And here is another one. I think we have many questions. Do you recommend building a test robot?
So on our team, we kind of do have a test robot, but it's more for like programming. I think it is good because if you like don't have anything the programming can work on, they're just sitting there and like not doing anything. Um, but having a test robot definitely can help in a lot of aspects, especially like prototyping and having like different prototypes on different robots. You can see how different mechanisms can interact with each other if you put it on a test robot.
Hey, oh, there's more. Okay, so I'm gonna I don't know if there's any question in particular that you would like to ask. I'm going according to the order of the questions, but you can also check the Q&A section.
Okay, then your
So,
order's fine.
do you need translation of some questions?
I can read some of them.
Okay, sounds great.
Someone asked how do you know how much time you should dedicate to each subsystem? So on our team, I think it's just like focus on how many points you're going to get for that subsystem. So for example, or like also how much time you know you're going to struggle for it. So for example, on the climber for 2020, we knew that climbing would get us a lot of points. So we're going to focus a lot of time on perfecting being able to get that many points. But for example, an intake is pretty simple, and an intake technically is not going to get you that many points. So, but we knew that we were struggling with it. So we spent a lot of time doing that because we know that in the end, that was part of our strategy of having a good intake so we'd get a faster cycle. So I think it just all depends on like what your priorities are. But definitely most of the time, if you have a higher priority towards something, you're going to spend more time dedicated towards perfecting that.
Okay, so we have another one. Do you design giving a preference to autonomous periods or teleoperated periods?
I think when we're designing our robot, we do it more towards teleop because that's the time like we're most controlling it, and also the time where you're getting the most points. But we do also do strategy for autonomous. Autonomous definitely can be like a strategic thing. Most people think like you just like do a path and it's pretty easy, but there have been times where like you have to have a really good strategy for auto to actually make it worth it. I think in Recycle Rush, autonomous was like a really strategic thing. There was like a point where you have to you have to like actually look into it and have a good strategy for auto to actually make it worth your time. So I think like autonomous should never be ignored during strategy, and maybe like a really small part, we should definitely always look into it.
Okay, so here is another question regarding about how your team works. It says, okay, about how many times should they how many time does your team dedicate for prototyping before creating the final robot?
Well, I think also prototyping can be done also in pre-season. I think it just depends on how much time or like how much you actually know from prototyping, and also like again what your priorities are. If you don't really care that much about like for example the intake, you don't have to spend that long on the intake because you just like want the ball to go in and go out. But if you really want a good intake and you want to perfect like each part of the mechanism, you're probably going to spend more time on each mechanism or each like prototype. For example, I think for our climber, we spent a lot of times, like a lot of time on doing the climber prototypes, but at the same time, we like also kept upgrading our final climber. So we like never had like a final version. We just kept iterating using different prototypes.
Okay, I think that answers other question. So we got a couple of more just to finish up. It says, do you decide to fix difficult problems via the design or with the help of your programming team?
I think most issues we try to use design wise. I think our programming team is getting like way stronger, but at the same time, we think our design is definitely way easier to solve those problems. one of the ways that we like solve the problems is we use like this motto. I don't know if anyone else uses this motto, but the motto is learn from the best and build the rest. So we can like solve issues using people's previous solutions and then build off of those. So we're not creating our own, like we aren't creating our own original idea for this, but we are building off of it to create a better idea or solution.
Okay, so here's a question regarding about rookie teams. We are a rookie team. Do you think using the Undermark drivetrain is a good idea, or should we attempt designing our own?
I think if you have never designed a drivetrain, you should definitely stick with the Andy Mark, and you could definitely make you like definitely change it around. But it would be a good idea to stick with the Andy Mark drivetrain. I know a lot of teams, especially ours, if we do want to change a drivetrain, we like work on it a lot, but we never have implemented it into our team. For example, our team, we recently started working around with a swerve drive, and we did work on it, and it was our first year, but we don't think we're actually going to use it until like years farther in the future. So I think you should definitely like stick with the Andy Mark for now, but it would be a good idea to look further into like how you can create your own drivetrain and improve off of that before you actually implement it in to the games.
Great. And I think just to sum up the mechanic or the design process conference, we have here a question. It is from Vania Garcia. What should a growing team focus to do in the competitions?
I think if you're sort of like, I don't think you should like try doing the most, especially if you don't know that much. I think you should definitely stick to like what you know. For some teams, like, being a defense bot isn't like a bad thing. A defense bot can be very useful for a team. So you can also always like stick to that. Or if you want, you could use your own goal saying, our team wants to, score points. I like the goals that I listed were more like achievements, like, oh, we want to be the best or the rank 1 at an alliance, or you want to be the championship winner. But your goal can be like based on like how your robot is performing. It could be like your goal is to climb. So I think it just depends on like what your resources also are, and also how much knowledge you have on the game or like sort of on FRC in general.
Okay, so I think some of the questions are very much they are similar to the ones that you have already answered. So Leila, it was a pleasure having you here. We will be seeing each other at Orange County, I think. So thank you so much for participating, and we wish you the best of lucks next season.
Thank you to you too. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at info@team4201.org.
Okay, so that was Leila Ramos from the Vitruvian Bots from California, and thank you for your time and for everything, Leila, and thank our viewers for staying tuned with us. For the next conference, we will be having Team Taters with electronic components and conference. So we will be having a small break, and we will be returning with you guys in about 20 minutes. Maybe we will be playing another Kahoot. Last time Pascual won. So in the meantime, please stay here with us, and see you, Leila. Thanks.
Bye, thank you.